So the big lesson is don't do business with people you don't know or have not verified through people that you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Friend of a friend or something. I didn't have any mutual acquaintances with this person because I'm not a felon.
Welcome to Real Investing, where we talk about real investing for the everyday investor. I'm Tim Herriage, your host. I'm joined by
Ryan Harper, the co-host.
and today our guest is Josh Stramellio. Josh, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Tim. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you're here. So we're going to dive right in. You recently did a smoking hot deal.
Oh, yeah. That's
In that, like, it feels like it was stolen almost, like a hot, like hotter than a $2 pistol.
It's almost like it wasn't ever a deal to begin with.
Oh, cool. Ryan, when you told me about Josh, I thought it was perfect because too often in the world of the digital realm, you hear about everything that goes right, and you and I are committed to sharing the things that can go wrong and not to scare people out of the business or into our mentorship course, but really just to help people.
Well, everybody, especially online, because everybody, it's all about wins. I'm in shape. I'm sexy. I'm having all the money. I'm having all the sex, and I'm making all the deals, and I'm doing all these things. But the reality is that's not every day. The everyday investor gets hit in the teeth every once in a while.
Right.
So
more often than not, sometimes for some of us. So why don't you introduce Josh?
So Josh is a friend of mine. We work together on several projects, and he's a professional comedian, professional lawyer, and he recently tried to do a deal. And Josh, let's just get into it. Tell us a little bit where were you at, why were you there, and then let's just get into it.
Yeah, so I was looking to buy a house. I had already done an investment deal on a handshake with that one went well, but I was looking to buy something that I would stay in for a year or two with my wife and do conventional financing for it. And so, I leaned on a lot of connections that you had, Ryan, for educational resources. Got a pretty good idea of like what neighborhoods I was interested in. Actually found a bunch of really cool tax credit programs that most people don't know about. So I was going to be able to get a lot of money back for being in lower income areas. There's a bunch of different federal programs. So I felt like I was in control of the situation and found a house, made an offer. They countered within 5K of what I was at. It was close enough to where I was going to pull the trigger. My wife and I go to visit this house, and it's like, I'm going to look one more time before we buy it. I wish I hadn't. And there's a woman sitting on the property next to it, the neighbor on the porch. This real friendly lady. She's like, oh, hey, you're looking at that house? I'm like, yeah, we are. She's like, as an investment, or you're going to live in it? And I was like, a little bit of both, but we're going to live in it for a while. And she's like, don't buy that house. They did a bad job on the remodel. And she knew all this stuff about the house. She was citing the square footage. She knew the name of the guy. She even called the owner of the property to further establish credibility. She's like, don't buy that house. There's all these houses. And so she got in the car with me, like acting like a nice God-fearing lady. She talked about church a bunch. There's so many red flags looking back on this that I was just like, oh. And she showed me a bunch of other properties, and she talked to me a little bit about tax foreclosures. And, I'm an attorney. I do some real estate law, a lot of contract law. I didn't know anything, really. I knew loosely how tax foreclosures work. I definitely didn't know how they worked in Dallas, and she seemed really knowledgeable. And she was like, let me show you some tax foreclosure properties. She showed me several, and she was like, we could get this one at bid next week. And the scam, I guess I'm spoiling that I got scammed.
No, it's not spoiling anything for me.
Yeah, the way the scam, well, for the viewer at home, yeah, dun dun dun. But the way the scam worked was she used, again, pretty sophisticated, but also I was an idiot. She used the real fact that the city of Dallas has like monthly releases of these, and that there is a waiting period to get your license and to get registered in the system. It does take a couple weeks. And she was like, she created a sense of urgency. She was like, we can get you applied and get you on the next one, but if you like these that I showed you, we probably need to use my license. You can sub under my license. And I was like, that don't make sense to me. And, she walked me through giving her the money to bid on her behalf. And I waited a couple days, and she comes back and she's like, congrats, you won the bid. I'm like, wow, this is great. She takes me to go see the property. We break in, which would make sense if it's a foreclosure. That's not in high,
to me, that's not a red flag.
Not a red flag yet.
No.
Yeah. And
Out of
before
all the red flags, breaking in is not the red flag.
My wife crawled through a broken window when she was 9 months pregnant. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
And I had done a little bit of research on this. So, like, I was like, man, is this really a tax foreclosure house? It was owned by the city of Dallas. It looked like it met all the requirements. And I gave her the money. A couple days go by, we win the bid. She's now showing up with a contractor breaking into the house. There's other people present in this. This is an elaborate thing. And she introduced me to a bunch of people. Like, and I'm still not sure necessarily which one of these knew what was going on or wasn't. So there's potentially a conspiracy here, right? Multiple people engaged in it, or maybe these are also, victims or loose acquaintances. So I'm now standing in this house that I thought I won, and I also want to say this wasn't like a greed thing. It was
It's a dream thing.
It was a trust thing. Like I felt like I try to help people. I do a lot of deals on handshakes. I've done 2 other real estate deals on handshakes that worked. What she did to kind of spoil here was such an obvious felony. Like, it was really, I can't believe someone was that stupid. Like, I can't believe someone would that brazenly commit crimes like this. And as I've been talking with the prosecutors and the detectives to try to go through the process, I think it's a combination of like, sometimes people don't prosecute. And I also think it's a combination of sometimes the police and law enforcement gets overwhelmed, and DPD's got a lot going on right now. But she just like walked into a supermarket, took the meat off the shelf, and then waved to the cashier and walked out. That's the analogy of like, there's no getting away with it. I have all the evidence like in the world. This person's going to go to prison for years.
So what happened? Like, you gave her like $1 million, like
about 34,000 total
as a deposit, or like collateral for the bid?
That was the bid amount. The house needed a lot of work. So we're talking about like a house that had been like gutted out by meth heads in a bad part of town. The comp houses were like in the 200 to 300 range, fixed up. And if you look at the bids for lots, and if you look at the bids for tax foreclosures, there's a lot of shells that do actually go for like 15 to 45,000. Like that's the range. So again, it wasn't that unbelievable. It wasn't that crazy. And we didn't think we were getting a house that was going to be turnkey ready. We thought we would be doing months and months of renovations and maybe putting another $70,000 to $100,000 into it to get it livable.
Well, and the fact that it was an auction, that makes another, hey, of course you're going to get it for 30, 35,000 because it's at auction.
Right.
If you want to pay market, you'd go to MLS and pay market.
And that's a cash only transaction, which I would imagine comes into play here in a minute.
Yeah.
Did you wire her like a bunch of money? Did you hand her a duffel bag?
We got a pending. I'm being really transparent about this, but I also, since there's pending, criminal, I'm gonna. There was some money that was wired and some money that was given in cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then you were thinking you'd get the deed in a couple weeks.
Oh, how did I find it? I guess what I'm leaving out of the story is, when did I realize I was scammed?
Because where we were is you're standing inside this house.
I'm standing in the house. I felt, a lot of gratitude that this person was helping me. I offered to do a lot of stuff to help her. I kept going, can I pay you? And she's like, no, I just want to see her. And that's the part where my blood boils. My wife has some health issues, and we're trying to have a baby this year. And I'm not I do well, but I'm not a wealthy man, like, to where, 34K is like, that's a night playing poker. Like, this person was so evil that she looked me in my eyes and looked my wife, knowing about my wife's health issues, because I'd explained it, and just smiled and said, I'm a good Sunday Christian and I just want to help you. That's all I want in return. And, that was where I was in that moment. So how I found out about it was, a couple days go by, and I'm like, hey, even before I went in the house, I was like, hey, do you have the bid, like, receipt, like the other stuff? She's like, yeah, I got it. It's in the car. And we were in the house. I was so enamored with looking at the house I just bought. Well, the paperwork's in the car. I was like, oh, I'll get it before we leave. And so I was like, hey, can I get that paperwork? And she was like, yeah, give me a minute. And then as we were all talking in the house, she got a call. She's like, oh, I got to leave. I'll be right back. And so, like, she left without showing me the paperwork. But, who's going to break into a house when they don't? Like, it didn't,
right.
Wasn't all figured out there, but it was like a little bit of a red flag. And then, I was like, hey, I want to get people started on this, but I don't want to, like, I need the paperwork to send, like, contractors, put in bids with the city. Like, I need the paperwork. And she kept giving me excuses, and the tone of her text started, and her voice started to change. And I wouldn't call myself an expert on human behavior, clearly, because she got me, but the demeanor started to become suspicious. And a couple more days go by, what she's saying is not adding up. And so I call for the first time the people with the tax foreclosure office specifically. It's the I'm gonna forget the name. Part of the reason why this scam works so well is the city of Dallas has a million departments.
Yeah.
There's like the tax department, and there's the assessor. There's like a specific team for the foreclosure. There's another one for HUD and HUD programs.
And they all tell you to call somebody else.
They all tell you to call. Every single person is like, it's not my department. So I played this game of phone tag where I talked to 5 or 6 different departments until I got someone who was like, well, you got to go to this address. And the address isn't even online. It's like they have an office. It's not like it's secret. It's just like they don't post it. And so it was like a Department of Housing or something, redevelopment. And so I go there and in person, and the woman's like, when I tell her what's happening, I'm talking to a human now behind the desk, and the blood like drains from her face. And she's like, honey. And she's like, that property's not even up for auction. And so I'm sitting there. I'm like,
So one thing, hearing it could be worse doesn't help when you're out $35,000.
yeah,
But there is a common Zillow scam, but it's usually for renters, where they'll rent the house,
yeah,
and people will move in, and they think they're living there, and they've paid a deposit, and then the owner will come by, or a realtor will come by to show it, and they're like, "Who are you?" And they're like, "I live here." And not only are they out money, but now they got to move out, or usually they'll figure something out with the owner. But still, though, it's like you could have moved in. Which would have been
this person
another
that did
penthouse.
this to me has done that exact scam. So there was what was there then. There's what I've done subsequently. I'm a nice guy. Like maybe not. I don't know. I try to be. I try to live with kindness, and I try to do unto others as they would do unto you, and all that stuff. There was how I was acting when this was all handshakes and God's good graces, or whatever the heck she was saying. And there's how I'm acting now. I have done background checks at this point. I've had private investigators involved. Like, this woman is going to prison. I may or may not get my money back. I don't know. But she's also scammed other people, and she's actively out there still using abandoned City of Dallas properties, renting some of them out, fake flipping other ones. And a lot of it is, I think, that if you stay small and within a certain range, like let's say 6 months rent, all these departments are going to be like, oh, that's not my problem, not my problem, not my problem. So I think she got a little greedy with this one. I think it's a little bigger than most of the ones that she was running. And she also, I don't know, dude, I don't curse. I don't know how you're running your channel. But how would you do this to a lawyer? Like that, and that's part of how she got me. It's like, who is that dumb as to do that? It's like, I have means. Like, I'm going to defend myself. Like,
Right.
I'm going to go on the attack, and that's where I'm at right now.
Well, not to go too far into the legal or what do you do now, but going back to, because clearly you've had a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah.
Tim's been doing this for 25 years, and I've been in adjacent 20 years. We have advice, we have history, we have this, but we're not 2 months out of it, gotten kicked in the teeth. What are the obvious things now that you're like, God, I'm such an idiot, I should have done this? What, like, just start, because obviously background checks and all that, but
Yeah.
what are the obvious things that you learned right out of the gate?
I think there's a lot of things that I've, and it hurt. It hurt. I cried, man. Like, emotionally, like, I was going to put my wife and I in this house, and I was imagining us having our kid, in this house. So I've gone through, my grieving and reflection process, I guess, on it. The lessons that I would say that I've taken from, I think there's lessons other people might take from it. I've done business deals, a lot of business deals on handshakes, and you hear a lawyer saying that, and you're like, right, like that. Like, I shouldn't be saying that, but as a lawyer, I know that you get lawyers when things go wrong. And as you spend the time and you build relationships with people, you give them a little bit of trust, and if they do well with that, you give them a little bit more. So I'm not gonna say that I'll never do a deal on a handshake again. But I will say that I'm definitely not going to do a deal on a handshake with someone that I just met on a porch. Right?
Yeah.
There's got to be a vetting standpoint. You got to know people for a certain period of time. This other guy did this other house deal, and I'm fortunate enough that this other deal I did around the same time, I made enough on that it almost completely cancels out this loss. So I just have to say I'm bad at real estate, or like, evened out. So the big lesson is don't do business with people you don't know or have not verified through people that you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Friend of a friend or something. I didn't have any mutual acquaintances with this person because I'm not a felon. And I would say the second
Oh, no, go ahead.
I would say the second lesson is if you think you have an edge, or if someone says they have an edge, why are they sharing that edge with you? And so in this case, this woman was sharing her expertise and her deep knowledge of this foreclosure system with me because she's such a good person. That was what she was presenting. And it's like, well, what are the other possibilities?
Right.
It's either maybe not an edge, there's skimming going on. And I was expecting the skim, man. I was expecting like,
Figure maybe she made $4 or $5 grand on
Yeah.
the markup or something.
and I would have
like that.
given it. That's what I was like, oh, like,
Yeah.
you should make money. Like you should make,
Right.
no one works for free. Like you should make money.
So when Josh was first telling me about this deal, the 10,000 hours, Malcolm Blank, that book, and there was just factors he was telling me, and it was like within 30 seconds, I'm like, that sounds like a scam. He's like, no. I was like, I think it's a scam, and I feel bad about not being a better friend and just because our relationship is very like old married couple where you bicker a lot but you love each other.
Yeah.
So I was just like, fine, you're smarter than me.
That's
go
all
for
your
it.
relationships,
That's
pretty
true
much,
too.
right? I mean,
But anyway, it's just like I feel bad for not going, shaking them and.
Well, there
You
was
know?
even, and I respect what you're saying. It's mostly true. You said too good to be true. You didn't say scam. This is slightly different. And I was like, fair point. I sent you the address. You looked it up, and you're like, okay, City of Dallas owns it. Like there was enough that she had done that you looked in a little bit, and you're like, oh man, it's like it wasn't. And then even the way she described the system, like she knows the actual legit way to do it forward and backwards. And she gave me just enough information that when I looked at it, had I gone to like a level 3 of research, it would have all fallen apart. But level 1 and level 2, it lined up. Like it did.
criminals are typically good at what they do. And look,
Can I jump in there? No, they're not. That's the thing. Actually, no. The crazy part is, this is the craziest part, okay? With what she knows, I have friends that are actually successful, that are wealthy. And what she didn't know, what I did, is there's all these really cool access programs that have funding for different things, rehabilitating, investing in certain areas. I had mountains of paperwork that I had become an expert on. There's a really good program. Bank of America has it. It's great. I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's $15,000 straight up, or it's like a certain percentage of a house up to 3% at $300,000. But like all in, closing costs, grant, free money, you can get like $17,500 for buying a house in certain areas in Dallas, and that's just like free money on top of everything else that you do. So if you're in that sweet spot of where you're getting the house, like you could basically get a deal, no cash in, no cash out of pocket.
Right.
And so she doesn't know. Like it's a very complicated program. The guy at Bank of America was like, yeah, we don't advertise the program because we don't really make anything on it. And it's part of like,
It's the community reinvestment stuff. What I'm saying though about criminals,
I'm saying she could have made more money
now, yeah, but
if she just had lunch with me and tried to do it legit based on how much she knows. Like we could have done 10 properties.
But what I'm saying is, like, I have an older brother that's a repeat offender, and most felons actually. And it's if they were to apply their knowledge, information, and sometimes I'd say intelligence, not common sense. Legitimate means they could make a ton more and
Yes.
not be in jail.
Yes.
And they typically know just enough, like you said, to get through level 1 and 2 of deception.
Yep.
And that's where they stop caring because all they see is the dollar signs at that point. Hearing you talk, I hear every time that I've ever loaned a contractor money, like just because they've been taking care of me, they've been good to me.
Yeah.
And every time my wife tells me not to, it never fails.
Yeah.
I think goodness of your heart is great with family and friends. Probably not for people that aren't going to be at your house on Thanksgiving.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of the way I look at it. Thanksgiving test.
It's a good test.
Look, if I'm not inviting you to my house on Thanksgiving, we're probably not doing. And even that, like, we borrowed $100,000 from my brother-in-law on a deal last week, and I made him docu-sign a promissory note before we did it. Like, before, and we do it all the time with him and some other family friends, pay good interest rate and all that. But, like, I can't let him give me that money and then I die of a heart attack and nobody knows where the money came from.
Yeah.
And he can't prove the interest rate I promised him
Make no mistake
whatever.
about it. I'm not sitting here as a lawyer saying don't get stuff in writing, don't get
Right.
paperwork. I'm just saying that for two professionals, right? Even the law. Let's talk about something that I do know, right? There are different ways to create a contract. And so two professionals that typically engage in a certain type of profession, for example, like contractors, real estate investors and stuff, you can form contracts just based on what customs are in your profession that a layman or a regular person that isn't a professional can't form. So like a handshake means different things to different people.
Yeah.
And you should always get protection, especially if you're out there. I guess I don't know if your audience is more like the average person or more inside baseball, but like, is it for
Probably,
investors, by investors?
Yeah.
Yeah. Get it in writing. Like,
Well, and that's the irony of the whole thing is like, with my legal troubles, it's not legal troubles, but
I thought you said illegal troubles. I was like,
well, no,
delete.
no, but like, I've only been involved in like one lawsuit, and it was because I had poor agreements in place, poor contracts in place. And that's one thing that
we fixed those.
yeah, and Josh has been very helpful in helping me craft a better agreement, better scopes, better master service agreements, and making sure it's like, your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed. Because at the end of the day, those agreements are not in place for now. They're in place for later when there's a difference of opinions. Mm-hmm. So that's the irony of this situation where it's like, but again, for you specifically, it goes back to, the dream aspect. I have my wife, I want to start a family, I want a house. But back to the real estate side, what are some other lessons that pop out of you, Tim, that just hearing the situation of how other investors could not get scammed, or prevent it?
I mean, look, you and I in the last 20 years have had a couple differences. A lot of times it came down to what exactly you just said, different understandings of the agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times people think, Josh, I want to document it to protect myself. I now choose to document everything to make sure there's no misunderstanding, because I've I've harmed or lost some friendships and some family relationships over business because there may have been a misunderstanding and no one did anything wrong. And you look back at it and you think, it's just misunderstanding, but sometimes what's said during a misunderstanding can't be put back in the bottle. So I feel like for me, it's always just like put things in writing, even if it's just a simple memorandum of understanding type thing. So where everyone understands who's doing what and who's getting what. Obviously, if there's any money changing hands, I just feel like something has to be in writing, specifically if it's cash, because obviously that's in general untraceable, very hard to trace back. Auctions are difficult because when we were back in 2012 helping buy those hedge fund houses at the auction, I mean, we would literally have a duffel bag with $250,000 or sometimes over $1 million of cashier's checks. So even the biggest in the world like still have to do these things, but you had to go to do things like sign it out of the vault with your name, right? Like, and then the person that signed it out, like at least you knew who had the cashier's checks from Bank of America, actually.
I have video of me handing the cash to her, so
I love that.
Yeah, this person has fucked up. like, let me make no mistake about that.
No, I think
It doesn't make me feel better though. Like I get the smallest, like, I don't know. This has become therapy. This whole thing has become a therapy session.
Well, the
but
thing is, yeah, go for it.
I could spend all my energy burning this person into the ground, or I could go, how do I make $500,000 this year to where this
Right.
becomes a rounding error? And I've tried to put my energy into how am I making $500,000 this year? I'm still gonna, not honestly about revenge. I know this person is out here doing it to more people. So I feel now an obligation and a duty, because if she's scamming people that she is, I know she
that
is.
don't have your resources.
Well, not only that, she's scamming people for rent. She's putting people in some of these houses that the city of Dallas owns, and then they're being treated like squatters and getting evicted. And they have these worthless leases,
Yeah.
and those people they only have $1,500, $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
That's what they have. They don't have the means. They don't have the ability to talk to a detective. When I talk to a detective, I get taken a little more seriously than a regular person, because they know that if they just blow me off too hard, which by the way is a lot of these guys, they got a big workload, right? And they got a murder over here, and they got someone who stole $1 million over here. They're never going to take someone seriously at $5,000 or $10,000.
Right.
And then this person operates in that like $5,000 to $15,000 thing most of the time. She got the number up. Also, this woman's an idiot. $30,000 is the minimum for us to do a mandatory felony. If she had any sense, she'd stopped at 29.9. Right? Keep it a misdemeanor. But what went just over it just this once. And so I feel like I have a duty now to make sure that this stops. And it's not just for me. It's about other people. Not even the ones that she's already done, but the ones that she will do if she's unmolested for the next 5 years.
But just to back up to the real estate side and the lessons there is
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not
is
related.
no, you're fine. Is like, and you're talking about being therapy is, and I don't want to be too harsh about it, but there's a lot of things that you were an idiot on, and again, I'm saying it out of love, but it's like, there's a reason there's a title company. There's a reason there's the cashier's text straight to the city of Dallas or the comptroller or whoever, I forgot who it goes to. Right. But like, there's a reason those things are in place, and if you follow those policies, it prevents you from getting screwed.
Yes.
Because like, again, I hear too.
If I may, though. If I may.
Go for it.
If I may. And I say this out of love, you ugly bastard.
That is a true statement. Yes.
There is a scam going right now. Okay. Yes, I was stupid. There are things I could have done better, but I want to say that the scams are getting more and more sophisticated.
Oh, absolutely.
There's one that I saw where a hacker had hacked an attorney's email address and then had been just monitoring the emails, just watching the emails back and forth. And he found a house that was being purchased for like $700,000. And he sent an email with wiring instructions for closing to the buyer from the actual attorney's email address. He sat on this for like 6-7 months, just waiting. And the buyer wired the money to the scammer's account, and there's no recourse.
So that is a great point. A lot of investors get frustrated with title companies right now. They're secure servers, and they have to log into their little thing, and it gets frustrating. But, I have seen in the lending world, literally payoffs get hijacked, because what they do is they'll hack one person's email at the title company typically, and they'll watch until Ternus Lending requests a payoff. And they'll delete that email, and then they'll insert their wiring instructions, and they'll spoof my email address, or they create a new URL and like change an L to a 1 or something like that, and then they'll send it through. And I know of several lenders that were payoffs of $250,000, $2 million, $500,000 at a time last year that they disappear in the ether. And now the lender in that case is protected because it's the title company's error, right? So their E&O and all that covers it. But we use a program as a lender called Funding Shield. So on every transaction, we engage Funding Shield. We pay them like $20, and they go and verify that the title company has a valid license for the title insurance they're issuing. Crazy enough, already in 4 months at Ternus, we have had 2 different title companies that did not have the appropriate state license to issue the title policy they were issuing. I mean, now, one time they just had to update something with the Secretary of State. The other time, we're pretty sure it was fraud. They disappeared after we found out. So I use Funding Shield because it gives me like a $3 million certificate on every deal, and they verify the wiring instructions. They call the bank, and they say, okay, is this really Josh Stramellio's bank account? Here's the account number I have. Here's the address I have. And then they give it to me in a secure format to where I know if I wire that money to that account, it's going to that guy, and he's licensed to give me title insurance. So there's things out there.
What I would probably do, I mean, not what I would probably do. I'll tell you what, the next house I buy, what I'm going to do is I would call the number from Google. So not the number they gave me. I would Google like the person I'm talking to, whether it's the Bank of America or, you know, the lender, whatever. And I'd be like, hey, I'm looking at this wiring information. I'm about to send $700,000. Can you just read back to me the account info on the phone? And I think that's pretty good. I might also use that service.
Yeah, you're supposed to call and verify wiring instructions every time. That's why it's on the bottom of every email signature.
Well, no, but right there, I would not call the number from the email.
Right, correct.
I would specifically Google what the number should be and call from the number on Google.
Right.
And then I would be like, but here's the thing, I wouldn't trust an inbound call. They have AI filters so good on spoofing voices, right? Just because the guy's on the phone with me, I'm like, no, I'm not going to trust that. Hold on one second. Hang up. Google the number. I'm about to send $700,000. I'll tell you what, you got me for 34. You're never going to get me for whatever the next amount is. Fool me once.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to a point we've made in the past about relationships. And again, it doesn't necessarily, you can't really do it at scale, but when you're talking to real estate investors, you know, and you're doing deals, like having a relationship with a title company, that's somebody on team. Like, you know, the importance of going to a closing and actually doing the funding right then and there, you know, bringing the duffel bag of cash or the check or doing the wire right there. But like having that relationship with those people, because again, I can actually see because of AI, because of technology, things reverting back to where you did have to show up in person, you know, just because like, how do you, I mean, but even then, I mean, Fred Robertson a couple years ago, he bought a house from a dead guy.
Yep.
You know, because somebody identity theft.
In 2003.
HOAs. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead. In 2003, we bought a house, Scott Horn and I, and the guy, it was in a vacant abandoned house in East Dallas, and guy called, met us there, showed us the house, signed the contract, forged the affidavits of heirship. I mean, everything. It was a title insurance claim though, so I mean, it took 8 months, but we got our $40,000 back.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, and by the way, just so a lot of people need to understand this, oftentimes in insurance policies, like title insurance, fraud is excluded. They can't guarantee fraud was not created. But in this case, the title company had made an error in verifying the affidavits of heirship, so we were able to claim it on their E&O policy. And so a key fact of that is like we actually got paid by their E&O, not the title insurance.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that, you know, Josh, something we can get into, I will in a second, is he's and something you're very passionate about is HOAs. But before we get into that, I just want to wrap up the scam side of it. Is, you know, that's the importance of community. That's why you network. That's why you have people like Tim or whoever in your life that you can be like, hey, you've been in this business 5, 10, 20 years. Is this legit or am I an idiot? You know, is this a scam or is this legit? And a lot of times you can do your research and you do your due diligence, but if you're new to the business, if you're doing that level 1, level 2, you're going to have these level 1, level 2 scammers that are, you're like, yeah, they look good on paper and they pass the smell test. But when you have somebody that has 10, 20, 30, 50 years in the business, they're going to take one whiff and be like, you know, so develop those relationships, go to networking events and meet those people to help you with that.
And
you know?
just the last, I've seen a lot of people get scammed by people within their community, people within, you know, I know their dad goes to the school with my kids or we're in the same church, etc. My advice is just in real estate, never do anything unsecured. always make sure it's tied to a property or ownership in an LLC or something. Where I see most people getting hosed is in unsecured transactions where it's not tied to real estate or ownership in an entity. There just got to be something securing your money, if not for you, if only for your family in case something happens to you, so they know the details and they're protected in the event of your passing.
Mm-hmm. So HOAs, I know you love HOAs. Josh is actually, I don't know how much you could talk about it, but he is.
I can talk about a lot, actually.
Well, the specific case or just in general.
I just can't.
Well, let's just get into HOAs and see where the conversation goes.
Yeah.
Because I know, and I'm being cheeky about Tim loving HOAs, but I think it's because every investor ever despises HOAs, because typically you have retired lawyers who live in a neighborhood who think they know about real estate, more of the real estate than you do.
Yeah, so I actually haven't spoken about this publicly, but for about a year and a half there, I fought an HOA in Rockwall pretty heavily and pretty publicly. The hearing was February 13th, or the trial, I'm sorry, and we lost. I actually paid the $53,000 attorney's fee judgment last week. That's the bad news. Mm-hmm. The good news is between the $50,000 I paid my attorney and the $53,000 I paid their attorneys, I made about $60,000 profit through the year and a half that I fought it, because we were making about $10,000 a month on the house.
This was a rental you guys were fighting on?
It was my old homestead that they all of a sudden banned all leasing whatsoever.
Yeah.
And they did it.
I really want to talk about that.
They did it improperly.
Yeah.
And I took them to court and did a settlement agreement. They breached the settlement agreement. I sued them over that for breach of contract.
Yeah.
Ultimately, as has now been explained to me by appellate counsel, very rarely does the HOA lose. And since I did not have any real damages at the point of claiming breach of contract, they think that is the main reason I lost. And that's why the claim for damages that they were awarded was $1, mm-hmm. whereas the bulk of the judgment was for their attorney's fees.
Yeah.
They weren't. They asked for the $200 a day penalty that's statutory, and they didn't get it.
Yep.
So looking back, I got to say this. That is a fight that I picked. I didn't pick. A fight I defended myself in, starting in June of 2022, that just now ended. In that time frame, I spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of emotional capital on that. It was personal to me. I'd lived in the house. My father-in-law was really sick. We moved out to go take care of him. We wanted to keep the house. You've been to Benton Woods. I love the house. So we started renting it out. We were doing midterm rental. We were doing really well on it. I'll just say it. A black family moved in, and they didn't like that. And they got together in the band of bigot fashion and banned all leasing period whatsoever.
If I may jump in. Yeah, I mean, this is your personal situation, and it's all valid. Like, this is crazy law. So I had some clients where I got involved. I think we started probably about 7 months ago. And I'm a younger attorney, but make no mistakes about it, I'm good. Like, when I sink my teeth in and I get in there, I find everything. And we are in a stage of emerging law that is affected by Airbnb and Verbo, and there's all these different ways that we're deconstructing what home ownership is, what rentals is, and the HOA is drawing lines in the sand. HOAs everywhere in different states and different communities. Some of it is just pure bigotry, right? Some of it is more legitimate reasons, like crime issues or people that don't treat the properties with the same respect that the other homeowners do. But we are seeing all around the country really, really, really aggressive HOAs that are taking whatever measures they think they can. You said it. The HOAs rarely lose.
Yeah.
Right?
Because it's a contract that you sign with them when you buy the house.
HOAs rarely lose when they stay within their authority, when they stay within the processes that are in place in the CC&R. The issue that is so interesting, this is why, especially investors, right? We're talking about something that affects investors. So I'm representing over 600 investors right now. in one case. And so maybe the biggest mistake, if it was even a mistake, or the biggest thing to change, right, is that it sounds like you were doing this by yourself.
At first, but then I got an attorney that.
No, I mean
No,
there were not other
Oh,
property owners that had joined with you.
no. I was getting a lot of silent support.
There you
but,
go. So I'll give you an example.
Nobody wants to be the black sheep of the neighborhood.
I'll give you an example about why this, I truly do believe, right? And I also want to say, you know, I have clients. I'm financially interested in this statement that I'm making right now, but as a percentage of my portfolio, it's relatively small. But this is the time actually for investors to not go quietly into the night or to say, oh, HOAs always win, because most of these CC&Rs didn't anticipate the types of businesses that are currently being run, right? Short-term rentals is one thing, and there have been all kinds of short-term rental bans. Different cities have done that. But I'm now seeing HOAs that are trying to ban or greatly restrict any form of rentals at all. And the CC&R is going to be silent on that. So they're now drafting new amendments, which means that I'll put it in a couple ways. One, you shouldn't do it by yourself, right? If you're sitting there and you're in a community of a couple thousand homes and you're like, oh, wow, this HOA is about to ban my ability to generate income off of this property, you shouldn't go hire a lawyer day one. You should go into your community and see how many other people are affected. I'm currently representing over 600 investors in just one community.
Yeah, so this is a house. This is a community that only had 34 homes.
I get that, and I'm talking more to your broad audience
Please.
than instructing on that. But I'm saying once you have 600, or even a couple, right? Those law fees, like I don't even want to do the math, but these guys are literally paying like pennies on the dollar for my hourly rate to do this, and we're on the right side of it, right? We've done the research, everyone's looked at it. Also, I'll say I feel so emboldened, and I have other counsel that is co-assisting me on this as well, even though I was the original attorney. These guys care. Like, these investors care. Like, they have multiple properties in the community. So, like, I'm constantly getting, hey, did you see this section? Hey, did you have this idea? Like, it's like there's a research team that's over here. And the HOA, and I don't want to give too many specifics away, but the HOA is not as sophisticated. And the HOA is, in this case, maybe motivated by bigotry. Yeah. So their arguments aren't going to be as sophisticated. Their arguments are not going to be as well researched, right? And the thing that it really hinges on is this is emerging rules. This is not 50-year-old rules in your community. This is usually either stuff that is open for interpretation, or they're going to have to pass a new amendment that either caps rentals or bans rentals or charges onerous fees that are designed to be punitive to make it not worth your time. But yeah, I mean, like, there have been some really cool cases in Texas where they did find discrimination in Section 8 housing that happened recently, about 8 or 9 months ago.
Providence Village.
Yeah, yep. Providence, yeah. So it's emerging.
I talked to Mike Daniel with the Inclusive Community Project.
Yeah, it's happening right now as we speak. So I think the next, 2 to 3 years, there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of battles between real estate investors and HOAs. And I personally plan on making myself into someone that's on the cutting edge of it and leading the charge in certain communities. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, when it comes to HOAs, is like, I've never been a part of HOA. The only HOA experience I have is going to that meeting for you, and that's my bias, where you've got this retired lawyer who's basically a Karen who has nothing to live for except for the HOA. Right. Over the course of past years of other people's bias when they interact with HOA, it's a similar thing. But I have to imagine there are some good HOAs, and the only ones you hear about are on the news that are so-called bad. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure you could pay me to buy a house in another HOA. Yeah. The state of Texas is told through the private property rights of 1974, I think it is. I can't remember. All the rules on if they take your property or remove one of your rights, the way they have to compensate you, etc. Well, that's a governmental authority. An HOA is a private authority. Even though they have their power through governmental laws, it doesn't matter. So they can literally, an HOA, the way the law is written and the way the courts are ruling, 30 people, 28 people of the 34 people could get together and decide that everybody should have a blue front door. And the minute they decide that, every single person would have to paint their front door blue.
It'd be fine.
Whatever color of blue they said. be fined, but then also it's not just a fine. They can charge you per day up to $200 for willfully breaching the covenants, and they can fine you into arrears, and then they can foreclose on that arrearage. So it literally grants the power of eminent domain, in my opinion, to a private body. And then here's the other argument. What if I have a DSCR mortgage that says I'm not allowed to live in that house? Hear me out. So now if you take my right away to rent it and I can't live in it, you are forcing me to sell it or to pay for it vacant, which then is undue harm. So I still believe, like, long story, but ultimately I lost the case in February. I was getting ready to appeal. My father-in-law, who we moved in to take care of, passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
And at that point, for my own mental sanity, I just told my wife, I said, we're paying it. We're done. Sell the house.
Yeah.
I just, same thing you just said in your first part. I have to go make millions a year. I don't have time to continue to fight over this when it's such a small little thing.
Yep.
And if I make bad case law, it hurts everyone else.
Yeah.
So that's the ultimate reason we chose not to appeal. Because now, challenging the constitutionality of it, things like that, I'm open to it.
You should let me look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to it because I do believe it's unconstitutional. I believe it's a violation of my private property rights.
I think there's nothing more Texan, right? There's nothing more, like...
There's nothing more un-American than telling your neighbor what they can and can't do with their house.
It's literally, look, even a good HOA, right, is the idea of, like, good communism. It's even a good one, even when it's done correctly.
Right.
But I think part of the problem is, and you guys use the example of a retired lawyer, I'd kill for a retired lawyer on the board of some of these ones that I talk to because they'd have a little bit more sense in them, right? I'd at least have a common language.
And also throw out the word Karen.
Well, you said, yeah, I mean...
There was a retired lawyer on this board that was a developer.
I wish I could talk about more specifics for one of these ones that I'm working on, but, like, I can't say that. Let's just say that some outrageous things have been made, claims, and then I go, okay, great, okay. Show me the numbers behind it. And they need a lot of time, and then they come up with the numbers, and I'm like, okay, it took you a month to show me these justification numbers. Because, okay, you were saying something earlier, and I wanted to jump in, but I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought. Yes, it is true that most HOAs would have the power to do this 28 out of 34, and then suddenly it's a blue door for everybody, right? But there's usually also protections that say something about, like, fiduciary duty, best business practices, right? And so if you could make the argument that, hey, like, this goes against your duties, this goes against best business practices, there's probably some, more vague or broad defensive powers that are within your CC&R as well to not let them do that.
Right.
So it is true that someone could read it, interpret it, and go, okay, well, 34.5, I'm just making something up in the CC, but 34.5 says I do have the power to make a blue door rule. But then that's where the lawyer or yourself, but I would recommend a lawyer here, can go in and read and be like, yeah, but under 12.6, you still have a responsibility to the homeowners, and there's no justifiable business reason for implying 33.5, so these cancel each other out. And so you get into these very large CC&Rs where, like, I've read some of them where it's like 150 pages of rules and regulations. And if you know what you're doing, you can be like, okay, it's kind of like the Bible. Like, if you sit down, like, if you want to just cherry pick a statement,
right,
you could find something that's on you can find one verse that justifies just about anything if you're just looking for one verse. And some of these, it's pretty similar.
Well, the thing about the HOAs, though, not necessarily yours or yours either, is a quick Google search and you will see the most absurd stories, the most absurd lawsuits, and it's usually the homeowner getting just, hey, they have $500,000 worth of fees because they put their trash can on the wrong side of the street.
Yeah,
it's just like, and it's and again it I don't know. It just like you said, un-American and
well, this is un-American. When you, let's say you were to have a development or a community that was funded by investors. Like, investors are sometimes the first ones to buy in a community. They help the developer finish the community out. And then suddenly you go, hey, no, there's no more use for people that are holding property. There's no more use for people that are speculating. There's no more use for, and you put all these, onerous new rules in. Like, first of all, what have you accomplished? We made a video of this on Not Your Lawyers. There's a video where I talk about HOAs on Not Your Lawyer. Shameless plug. Check out Not Your Lawyer YouTube channel. Ryan and I do. At the end of the day, the homeowner sometimes is galvanized and thinks that it's the homeowner versus the investor, or it's the homeowner versus the renter, right? And it's rarely the case. These are ecosystems.
Yeah.
Right? And it goes back to how property taxes are drawn up, how your schools are funded. It goes back to who your neighbors are. And then if you flood the market, if you some of these communities get their way, they're like, we want to get all the renters out. We want to get all the investors out. Okay, do you really think you're going to be able to sell a third of your community to new home buyers that are going to look like you and talk like you and not tank the property value? And it doesn't work. It doesn't add up. The numbers aren't crunching.
Well, to me, I talked to one attorney that felt like it was probably more of a federal equal housing case, almost like the Walker settlement with Section 8.
Yeah.
Because when you outlaw all renters, period, I mean, there's study after study that renters are more likely to be minorities and more likely to be low income.
Yes.
And actually more likely to be a single parent or woman, actually, I believe most of them stay. And when you redline a high-income neighborhood and say they're not allowed here, I still believe that it is an equal housing thing as well.
I would agree with you. I would strongly agree with you.
Yeah.
I would say that I care that if you buy a house, you should be able to do whatever you want with it. Let's start with that. And I believe that if you have money and you want to rent in a community and someone wants to rent that to you, that you shouldn't be able to not live in a community because you can't afford to buy in it.
Right.
That's outrageous. Like, what is that? You're saying you only want to live with people that can afford to buy? That there's something weird in that statement.
Well, because in Rockwall County, I can tell you the people that can afford to buy a $700,000 house,
Yeah.
there are 3 minorities in that 34 people. And they didn't show up to court to argue with me.
Yeah.
They've silently supported me, right? But, I get it. They don't want the eyes on them. They don't want the board member that already walked up. Well, how did you afford this house?
Well, the irony is they probably couldn't afford that house now anyway.
Yeah.
Because they probably bought when it was $85,000.
Oh no, they're actually new people. But the thing is for me, when I look at it, here's the other thing, and I will say this: I believe if that's what the rules say when I buy it, I should have to follow them.
That is a different situation.
I wholeheartedly, you form a over 55 community, and
Yes.
that's what it's for.
Yes.
I am not some sort of bully that thinks I should be able to buy in there and do what I want to do.
That's why it's called CC&R's covenants.
Right.
A covenant is a promise, right? When I buy something, and property rights are so interesting, right? Because you have water rights, mineral rights, oil and gas, air, what's it called? Federal, your airspace,
Yeah.
right? Like that's even a right that's implied up to a certain point, and then you don't own the airspace past a certain point on your property. That becomes FAA. That's federal, okay? So it's really interesting that you can buy a house and say, okay, I'm buying this house for this much money. There's all these things that you're expected to get with the house. There's all these other things. And for people to be able to come in after the fact and go, no, now it's encumbered with this. You can't use it
to
for that.
retroactively remove your
It's
right.
theft. It is theft. It is literally theft.
Unjust taking.
It is theft.
Great. So you're trying to get me to fight again.
If you want to fight an HOA, I promise you, I might not be the oldest attorney, right? I clearly don't have the best record of real estate transactions. But if you want to fight an HOA, I get off on it. I really enjoy it. I am the guy that will make the HOA way more miserable than you, and I'm pretty affordable, so check me out.
I just paid them last week. Well, that was
I like fighting HOAs. I enjoy. I care. I'm on the look. If you do what you enjoy, you never work a day in your life. There's certain areas of the law you couldn't get me to do a divorce with kids. There's not an amount of money. There's literally not an amount of money. I won't do it. My mom, God bless her soul, she's still alive, but God bless her soul. My mom was an attorney ad litem, and so when I was growing up, I saw my mom work with kids. I'm tearing up just thinking about it. I saw my mom work with kids in every horrible situation you could imagine, neglect, abuse, divorces, all these things that happen. You couldn't pay me enough to do anything involving custody of a kid. And I'm thankful for the people that do it. you might not even have to pay me to go after an HOA. And certain like you give me a beer.
That was a contract, like he talked about earlier. That was a contract. We're two professionals. You heard it.
It's a binding agreement.
I'm one of those guys that when I was like 12, 13 years old, we would play Monopoly. I would sell futures. I just came up with the idea of selling futures because there's no rule against it. Right. I was like, hey, for $400, I'll give you 3 free passes on my Monopoly. And then they were like, hey, you can't do that. And I'm like, where in the rule book does it say I can't? And it all just devolved into shouting. And then we stopped.
I'm using
board
that the
games.
next time I play Monopoly.
Dude, I got some.
Dude, I haven't played Monopoly I want to play Monopoly now.
Yeah, you could sell free passes. You could sell futures. You could sell, let's say you're playing a 5-person game. You could be like, hey, for $300, I'll sell you, if I land on this property, I'll sell it to you at market rate.
The biggest thing we need to know about Monopoly, though, is Josh is winning.
Yeah.
We need to
That's Catan. That's
there is,
Catan.
it's been a while since we had game night, but
Yeah.
before we even start, he'll just start yelling at everybody, Ryan's winning, and then everybody gangs up on me. I'm like, that's not fair.
That's great.
So as we wrap,
I don't even know what we're talking about at this point.
I
but
know,
it's
I
fun.
know, I know.
Compelling.
You are no longer leaving early for traffic, just so you know.
Now we got to stay till 6.
Oh God, no. Well, let's make 3 more episodes about how we hate HOAs.
But let me actually say this though. The best advice I got in that entire thing was with the appellate attorney, very, very large, respectable firm from the National Rental Homeowners Council, and his first statement was, "I wish you would have called me first," right? Because as you know, undoing things that were already done at trial are very difficult.
Yeah.
But number 2, and it stuck with him. I've repeated it almost weekly since then. He said, no matter what, Tim, what you have to understand is if you keep picking fights, you're going to be in a fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if someone's out there listening, these things are almost like custody cases. I think the people get really nasty. They came after my personal character and things like that.
Yeah.
Before you get in a fight, just know, if you pick fights, you're going to be in a fight. And make sure that, number 1, you have the stomach for it. But number 2, just make sure it doesn't distract you away from maybe back to the initial segment, right? Making $500,000 a year. Now,
Yeah.
I respect what you're doing with that first case of trying to protect other people.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what I was trying to do to some degree on my property.
Yeah.
I still feel like I should.
May
Are
I
we getting the gang back together? Are we going back after this HOA?
No.
Is that what we're-
Let me.
Someone else
from the
feeling
cheap
this
seats,
sexual
please.
passion
Let me
that
from
I'm-
the cheap seats jump in. So, you win the case. Then what?
I keep renting the house out, and
For how much?
I was getting $10,000 a month.
All right. So $120,000 a year, right?
Yep.
Well, debt service, whatever. We'll just say it's $100,000, whatever. It doesn't matter the amount. If you didn't, but how much headspace is going to go to that effort?
Right.
And if that headspace was, say, hey, I'm trying to build $1 billion Ternus.
No.
Would you care about this HOA case?
Not at all.
One bit.
Not at all.
I think that's your answer.
I care about it for the industry.
I understand
But
that.
There may be other fights I can support that don't take my headspace,
That's the point I would make.
and they don't have me on here talking about band of bigots and Karens, because that shit's gonna get played in court.
Well, yeah, because because even in my situation, like I had the YouTube thing, that former client where we're in a thing, and it's like you can make the argument that this is my property, and hey, you owe us money, and in my hands it's a multi-million-dollar asset, in your hands it's worthless, but is that worth the headspace to fight it?
Right.
Problem, the thing is, I have people like Josh and I have people like Corey on my team. They're like, let's go, we got your back, we can, wah. And I'm like, and he's still mad at me for that. But the thing is, like, or I could build Harper Belmont.
The only thing I'll say, devil's advocate there, the only thing I'll say, right, is, okay, it might not be worth your headspace, right? But you can,
Outsource.
there's a calculation where you could be like, okay, for a certain amount of money, I can let someone else fight that fight.
Yeah.
And that's what, look, a good lawyer is an advocate. A good lawyer will tell you when it isn't worth it, right? Like I more times than not, I'm telling my clients down. right? I got one that I'm talking to right now. Let me think of how I can say this anonymously. Hold on. Let me anonymize it. Give me 5 seconds. We'll fix this in post. Okay. So I got a client that's being pushed out of a living situation. He wants to live somewhere, and they're trying to do something else with it. He didn't do anything wrong, but they're just trying to make him move, basically, from a place he's renting. And he wants to stay. He doesn't really understand specific performance. I've explained to him 30 times, hey, you can get anything else, you can't get this. And he's like, let's go. And for months, I've been telling him, this is a negative equation. You're going to spend all this money. You're not going to get much lift from it. Your odds of winning are basically zero. And he said, hey, for me personally, right now, this is all emotional. It's what I want to do. And I was like, okay. But I talked you down the entire time. Like, a good lawyer is an advocate for you. But sometimes, and I got another guy who's the other way, he just went through a bad divorce. He's had a couple business deals go bad, and he needs to fight. This other unrelated to the divorce. He's got this issue, and he's ready to not fight. And I'm like, as your advocate, as your guy right now, there's a lot of money on the table right here, and this is the time to fight. I know you're down. I know you want to be just like go to bed or like not, but like you actually need to fight. So sometimes as an advocate, you're talking people down, and sometimes as an advocate, you're like, I think you really need to just find one more round.
Right.
You know?
I think the key there is like taking the emotion out of it and what's the most economic choice.
Yeah.
But no, it's.
I always go back to the dollars. I'm doing poker equations. I'm like, here. And I try to use poker when I talk to my clients. And I've had other lawyers tell me not to do this, but I'm like, I'm just going to keep doing it. I tell my clients, hey, there's multiple outcomes here. There's several different ways this would go. It's not even black or white. It's not winning or losing. There's different versions of winning and losing. So I'll be like, look, we got a hand right now. And like maybe that hand is a set. Or maybe that hand is 2 pair. That's worth some money, but it doesn't beat all hands. And so it's like, okay, most of the time we're going to win and it's going to look like this. And some of the time we're going to lose and it's really bad. And then some of the time we're going to win and it's really good. But like, here's what I think these probabilities are. Like, and then I'll chop it up by whatever I actually think it is. And then lawyers are like, don't do that. I'm like, I want them to be as informed as I am.
Now I have real damages. I paid the $53,000.
Sounds like you didn't have damages. So it sounds like you were able to continue renting it out, and you said you already made money on the deal.
Well,
so
6 one way, half dozen another.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, look. I mean,
I'll tell you this: one property. I almost never would I recommend someone to fight a HOA over one property. Right. But if you can find commonality, if you can find, hey, my rights are being infringed on, and my neighbors, and then also I'll say this, and I think most lawyers wouldn't. Sometimes what you need is not a lawyer. Right. Sometimes what you need is somebody to help you win the next board seat that's up for grabs. Like, you can get representation in different ways, right? Like, you need someone that can run a campaign. You need someone that can, run a Facebook ad.
You know what the funny thing is? In this HOA, the only way to get on the board slate is to be nominated by the board.
That sounds problematic, man. Sounds. It's also small. 34 people is a.
And more than half the votes are by proxy, so nobody even shows up to hear arguments. It's just.
That is going to be atypical.
Yeah.
That is not going to be your average.
So there you have it. Tim Herriage gave up. No, I'm just.
And we're out.
It's ego, right? Like, I mean,
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
There's all sorts of me that wants to fight this thing and win, or even just show them and like file some new suit, get the thing set aside for a while, rent it out while I fight them. I still come out financially ahead. Ha ha ha. But I can also sell the place, put 400 G's in my pocket, and go pay cash for a house somewhere and just be okay.
Yeah, because, like, I mean, let's just play the ego card. Okay, you make $1 billion, and you're like, I'm going to go buy the entire neighborhood. You buy them all out and change the HOA. And then what? Nothing. Right. Nobody wins except for them for selling their properties.
Right.
And you get to change the HOA. So, to me, it's like, I think it's ego. And my advice, again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not even a real estate investor.
You're my friend, though. You've seen me do stupid shit.
I'm not your friend, but I am an attorney.
I've seen both of y'all do stupid shit. But it's like,
so why don't you wrap up and sign us off?
We'll fix that.
Hey guys, if you find yourself doing stupid shit, find a friend that'll say, hey, maybe pause, maybe think about it a little bit. Thank you, Josh, for coming in. You do comedy, you do lawyering. We have 2 different YouTube channels we're working on, Not Your Lawyer and then Barely Legal.
So cool. Barely Legal is
and
so
then
cool.
you've got your comedy.
Comedy everywhere.
And don't take real estate investing advice from Josh, but take
Please don't.
lawyer advice. Tim,
Thanks, bud. This was a good episode.
Yeah, I think it was fun. Loans.
I just need to take a deep breath at this point.
Hey, if you need media, come to Harper Belmont. If you need loans, come to Herriage.
Thank y'all for watching again, and we'll see you soon.
All right, take care.